I welcome all of you to this online webinar on Azure administration. So my name is Sanjay Singh and I would be instructor for this webinar. So let me introduce first of all myself, then we will start this webinar. My name is Sanjay Singh and I have 13 years plus of experience into IT training as well as into production. So I do have certification in the same domain where I have certification as a MCT, Microsoft Certified Trainer, and I can deliver all official trainings for Microsoft like Azure, and I do have certification into Azure, Azure Fundamental, Azure Administration, Azure Architecting and Designing, Azure Security. Apart from Azure domain, I have certification into AWS as well. So in AWS, I have certification into AWS Cloud Practitioner, AWS Solution Architect Associate and Professional, and I'm an authorized trainer of AWS as well. So I have certification into Cisco routing and switching as well. I have certification into Huawei routing and switching as well, and I'm an authorized trainer of Huawei as well. And I do have certification into Microsoft Server family. So where I have certification into Server 2003, 2008 R2, 2012 R2, 2016, and MCSC into private cloud. So these are the certifications which I'm holding right now, and we are going to discuss about Azure infrastructure, how you will administer Azure infrastructure and few services of Azure infrastructure, and then there would be one lab demonstration on load balancing. Administer Azure infrastructure. So these are the key points, the webinar objective. So we are going to discuss about the portal, networking components, Azure policies, and trend for Azure AZ104. And there is a small lab for Azure load balancer where you will get understanding how load balancing works into Azure. When it comes to Azure or any cloud platform, so when it comes to manageability, how you will manage your cloud services, what options are available into Azure or for Azure through which you can access and manage your services, through which you can do different type of API calls. So when if I need to do API calls, different API calls to manage Azure resources or services, I can use Portal, I can use CLI, I can use PowerShell, I can use SDKs if I'm a developer and I have expertise into Java, Python, Ruby, PHP. So I can use SDKs through which I can do a API call and I can access Azure resources. Or I can use PowerShell through which also I can access and manage my Azure resources. I can use CLI tool to access and manage my resources. I can use Portal if I don't have expertise into CLI and PowerShell or any SDK. I can start my learning from Portal, which would be a web UI. So through this web UI, you would be able to access, manage, and configure Azure resources. Or you can use mobile application as well. So through mobile application also you can manage Azure resources. So these are the tools which you can use for managing Azure resources. So Portal and Cloud Shell. When you will access Azure Portal, you will get Cloud Shell also. What is Cloud Shell? Why I will use Cloud Shell? So basically, when it comes to, again, as I told you that when it comes to management, so management tools, we have different types of tools which I can access, which you can access, and through which you can access and manage Azure resources. When it comes to prerequisite, so let's assume I'm using my laptop and I'm going to use PowerShell, local system PowerShell, or CLI to access and manage Azure resources or Azure services. So if I'm going to use PowerShell, I should have 5.1 PowerShell version on my system. There should be .NET Framework 4.7 or later, which should be installed on your system. If you already have these prerequisites, then you can install Azure PowerShell modules and you can access those services. If you have 64-bit operating system, you can download CLI MSI package and through which you will get Azure CLI tool. What if I'm not using a 64-bit operating system, or might be I'm using Windows 10 Home Edition where I don't have any PowerShell tool and service. So it means I cannot access and manage my services. I cannot run script. I cannot run PowerShell command through my local system. So in that case, if you have to run PowerShell command or CLI commands, how you will run? So Azure is providing you one online shell, browser accessible online shell, which you can use. So where you can see this drop down, either you can use PowerShell or you can use CLI. So based on your expertise, you can choose your terminal and you would be able to run your commands here. PowerShell commands and CLI commands. You don't need any tool on your local system. In browser, you would be able to run your PowerShell command and CLI command. So this would be the first way which you can use. As I already told you, we can use Cloud Shell if I don't have PowerShell or CLI on my local system. I can use Cloud Shell to access and manage my resources through PowerShell commands or through CLI commands. In that case, you should have knowledge of commands. Or I can use mobile application. So through mobile application also I can access and manage my resources. In mobile also I will get a Cloud Shell bar where I can run commands, PowerShell command and CLI commands. So let me show you a overview of this portal. So you will get a insights about this Azure portal. So this would be your Azure portal. So when you will sign into Azure, you will get this UI. So this would be the default UI for you on Azure, where you can see these tabs and there's a search bar. Let me explain you all these. So at left hand side, this would be your UI, which is known as home screen on Azure. So at left hand side, you can see that there are three tiles. If you will click on it, here you can create your resource. You can go to your home screen. You can create dashboards and you can redirect to your dashboard. You can create multiple dashboards as per your department, as per your project. You can see all services which is available into Azure. You can see your all resources into favorite tab. Resources which is deployed by you in different resource group, different subscriptions, different reasons. So you will get a complete overview about your resources inside your account. Then resource group. So frequently access resources you can add into favorite tab. There's a star which you can see whenever you will move your cursor to any service, you will get one star here. So if the star is selected on this service, service will be added into favorite tab. It means you are accessing the service frequently. So you don't need to search this service. Or what you can do, write to this three tile, as you can see, there is a search bar. So if I need to search any service, if I have to access any service into Azure and I don't know from where I will get that service, if I need to check any documentation related to any service, I can type my keyword into the search bar. I will get service, resource, and document output, which I can select and I can access my resources. Now, right to this search bar, you have Cloud Shell bar. So you would be able to access Cloud Shell, in which you will get PowerShell and CLI. Right to this Cloud Shell, you have directly plus subscription, where you will get Azure tenant information. Right to this directly plus subscription, you have notification bar, where you will get all notification related to successful deployments, service which will be resource or any service which will be in under provisioning or under deployment. You will get notification that also, or failure notification also you will get here. Credit notification you will get here. Now, right to this notification bar, we have settings tab where you would be able to configure your Azure account. So you can set your home screen, you can set your contrast, your theme for your dashboard. So you can select your default UI, which could be like a home screen or a dashboard. It depends on you. So right to this setting bar, we have help section where you can create or raise your tickets. You will get keyboard shortcuts. You will get Azure Community Center where you can post your questions. So here you will get your account information and your current directory where you are logged in. So this would be your Azure portal. So if you have to configure anything, you can start your learning from the portal, and later when you will get experience, you can switch to PowerShell, CLI, or SDKs as per your expertise. Next, networking. When it comes to networking into Azure, so networking into Azure, we have different type of networking resources, networking component into Azure. So first is VNet, Azure Virtual Network. So Azure Virtual Network is infrastructure related service similar to your on-prem, like if I'm talking about physical data center. So if I am a startup organization who is going to build a data center, okay, so first of all, I need to configure a network infrastructure. So first of all, I need to design a network infra as per my organization, as per my department. So if I have 4 departments, I will design my network infrastructure. I will divide my departments as per the subnets. So it means I will divide my network into subnets, and I will assign those subnets into respective departments. So similar to that, if you need the same type of configuration where you can customize your resources based on the requirement, project requirement, based on your department, based on the compliance requirement, you can configure a network, which is called here Azure Virtual Network. So you will get a VPC, a virtual private cloud, where you can customize your network infra based on your requirement. Like if I have to configure two-tier application, so for configuring two-tier application, I need a front end, which will be like my web tier, and I need a DB tier, a database tier. So what I will do, I will create a VNet simply, in which I will create a subnet, web subnet, and a DB subnet, and then I will place my resources inside the subnets. And I can place virtual appliance as well, a firewall device inside my VNet through which I can filter traffic for which will be inbound and outbound. So later you can customize. So basically for customizing based on the compliance, based on the security, so that you will get more control over your infrastructure, and you can filter your traffic, you can implement your security boundaries through which you can restrict your users. So you can filter your traffic. So where you can use different third-party virtual appliances, or you can use Azure dedicated virtual appliances to secure your network, so to secure your infrastructure. So you can use Azure Virtual Network in that case to build your network solution, to build your network infrastructure, and you can customize your infrastructure based on your requirement, based on the compliance requirement. Next, we have Azure Load Balancer. Now, what is Azure Load Balancer? So basically, Azure Load Balancer is a service into Azure which will distribute your request to multiple endpoints. When I'm saying multiple endpoints, it means I'm talking about backend servers. Now, why I need a load balancer? What would be the requirement where I can use load balancer? So we need to think about high availability. When I'm talking about load balancer, it means I'm talking about high availability. So high availability, what it does mean? It means I can deploy my web application and my database on a single web server, single compute resource, single virtual machine. If I'm deploying everything on a single virtual machine, this will be known as a single point of failure. So if this would be single point of failure, due to any reason, if this VM will be down, it means there would be a downtime for my application, which I don't want. If I have a business critical application, I don't want downtime for my application. So how I can increase availability of my application? So I need to deploy, first of all, I need to use distributed architecture where I will use more than one instances for my web server, and I will use more than one instances for my DP. Correct. So I'm using more than one instances for web server. I'm using more than one instance for database. Now I'm using identical instances, more than one identical instances for web server. Now how I will ensure the traffic which I'm getting from internet, this traffic will be distributed to my all endpoints. So to ensure this, you need to use a service here which is known as load balancer. So you need to use load balancer, and load balancer's public IP or public DNS would be the front end for your end users. So end user will send request to your load balancer front end. Load balancer will distribute this request to backend resources. So now you will configure here load balancing rule, and as per the rule, load balancer will distribute requests on port 80 or on port 443 as per your requirement. So where you can use load balancer, if you're using more than one instance for high availability purpose, you can use load balancer as your load balancer. So in Azure load balancer, which is now available for global as well. So previously this was available as a regional service, but now that is available as a global also, where you will get Azure global load balancer to prevent from regional failures. So if your regional load balancer fails, you have multiple regional Azure load balancer, which are connected to your global load balancer for failover. So automatically scales to create highly available access to your application or resources. So it's as your managed service. You don't need to manage load balancer. You need to manage your backend resources. So load balancer will automatically scale as per the request. Then we have next service, which is VPN gateway. What is VPN gateway? So VPN gateway, which connect your Azure infrastructure to your on-prem, to your physical data center. So if I have a physical data center in which I have servers, I have departments, here I have VNet in which I have my resources. So if I need to connect my VNet with on-premise server, I will use, there are two ways which I can use. First, I can use site-to-site VPN, or second, I can use express route to connect my on-prem network. If I'm using site-to-site VPN, it means I'm using public carrier. If I'm using express route, it means I'm using dedicated private network. So both have different features. You will get bandwidth comparison, different bandwidth into express route, different bandwidth into VPN. Now you can use VPN gateway into VNet to VNet connectivity also. If you have to connect VNet, so for connecting your VNet, different VNets into within the region, across the subscription, you can use VPN gateway. The two options, either I can use peer-to-peer, sorry, peering, or I can use VNet to VNet VPN. Now, there are different use cases for using peer-to-peer, sorry, peering or VNet to VNet. It depends on your requirement. So based on the requirement, I can choose whether I need to use peering or whether I need to use VNet. So it depends on your compliance as well. If you need encryption, so you should use VPN. Or if you don't need encryption, you need bandwidth, high throughput for your applications, you can use peering in that case. So it depends on the use case, depends on the requirement. So Azure Application Gateway, next service is Azure Application Gateway. When it comes to gateway services, so in Azure, if I need an advanced load balancer, why I'm saying advanced load balancer? Just because my requirement is advanced. I need to configure my load balancer with some advanced services, with advanced features. So we have Azure Load Balancer, Azure Application Gateway, which will give you advanced feature. Let me explain you what type of features you will get. So you will get WebSocket 2 support, HTTP 2 support, you will get custom header, you will get custom error page, you will get sticky session, you will get connection training. So connection training with graceful removal. You will get web application firewall support, so which will protect your application from DDoS and cross-site scripting SQL injections, which use OWASP rule. So we'll get SSL termination or SSL offload feature on your application gateway. You will get path-based routing or URL-based routing feature on Azure Application Gateway. You will get multi-site hosting, multi-site request redirecting. So you can redirect your request, or you can handle requests for multiple domains, multiple websites. So up to 100 website, one Azure Application Gateway supports, which you can use. So these are the features. We have many features, many more features which you can use, but these are the premium features which you can use with Azure Application Gateway, which you will not get into standard load balancer. Then we have next feature, which is Content Delivery Network, CDN service. That is also a service which you can use to decrease latency and increase performance. So if I have application into US East, where I have a global presence, I'm getting requests on my application from across the globe. So where my users, they are facing some latency issue. So I need to improve performance of this application. How can I improve performance? So I can use Azure as network. as locations where I can cache my static content, my web application, or dynamic also. So you can cache your static content, let's assume, like my videos, images, JPG file, PDF file. So that will be cached to users edge server, users nearest edge server. So whenever user will make request, this content will be served locally to user, and user will get a content faster as compared to direct access. So right now, you don't need to access your content directly from your origin server. But yes, if you don't have this content, if Azure don't have this content into their edge server, then the request will be sent to origin server, and in that case user will face latency issue. So first user will always face latency issue for a content. If the same content will be accessed by a second user, third user, fourth user, you will they will not face any performance issue, just because it will be cached on nearest edge server. You can customize your setting, you can implement TTL, you can flush your cache. So by purging feature, so you will get a purging feature into content delivery network, through which you can remove your content. If you have some updated content, you can remove your content from your edge locations. So user need to request for a updated content. You can do that also through CDN, content delivery network, through which you will get performance. Policies, Azure policies. So now, when it comes to compliance, so based on the compliance requirement, now I need to ensure that whatever resources are deployed inside my organization, or inside my department, or inside my subscription, or inside a resource group, so they all are deployed in a compliant manner. Correct. So where I'm using different tools and services, might be I'm using Azure default service, which is known as Security Center. So I'm using Security Center where I am using some regulatory compliance. So through which I'm getting secure score. So based on these secure score, you will get recommendation that that is your score for as per the security compliance. Now you need to change your security recommendation. Based on the security recommendation, you need to remediate your resources. So when it comes to remediation, so what I can do, I can create policies through which I can enforce my user to deploy resources into the compliant manner, so that whenever I will run any auditing or any other monitoring or compliance auditing, so I will get a report in which my resources, they will come under into compliance status. Correct. So if they will not come into compliance status, then there should be some remediation, so which you can specify. So Azure policies will help you to deploy your resources into compliant manner, where you have different types of compliance policies, where you have regional compliance policy, state compliance policy, you have a country compliance policy. Correct. So based on the and it's industry specific compliance policy, depend on the application. So which belongs to a financial organization or banking organization or health organization. So depending on that also, you will get a different compliance policy and requirement. So I need to ensure how I will enforce these policies, how I can ensure that whatever resource will be deployed, they all will be deployed in compliant manner. Simply what you can do, you can create Azure policies which you can implement to your scope levels. So we have three scope levels. Either I can apply this policy to my management group, or I can apply to my subscription, or I can apply to my resource group. So these are the three scope levels which I can select based on my requirement. So Azure policies is a service which you can create, assign, and manage. So these policies enforce different rules and effects over your resources. Let me give you a few examples. So let's assume we have user one, who have honor permission through RBAC, role-based access control. So if he have honor permission on a resource group RG1, let's assume. So we have one subscription here, so which I'm using for dev. So dev subscription, in this subscription, I have a resource group RG1 and this user one who is owner of this resource group one. So what it does mean? It means user one who can create, update, and delete resources within this resource group. So he can create any resource, any type resource, any size resource. He can create resource into any location. He can delete resource. He can assign permission to other users as well. That is the meaning of honor role. So it means he have full permission to work inside this resource group. Now, what I need to manage here as a being a solution architect or being a administrator, Azure administrator, what I need to confirm here. So I need to create a policy just because this resource group one I'm going to use for my Indian region application where we have some compliance policies, recent compliance policy which state that you should deploy your resources within Indian data center. So in that case, just because user one who have honor permission, so it means he can create resource into any region. So what I will do, I will create a Azure policy which I will apply to resource group, which is known as location bus policy, where I will select allowed location, which would be India for me. Okay, so I will allow Indian data center, Central India, West India, correct. And those locations which I will add into my policies, user would be able to create resources within those locations or regions, except then those regions, if user is trying to create resource in any other region, resource deployment will be failed and user will get a error. So you can create this type of policy. You can create another policy which would be VM size policy, as we are using public cloud. So using public cloud means you have to pay for the resources which you are deploying into cloud. So it means if I'm using a dev subscription, so I should ensure that the resources which will be deployed by users, so they should deploy cheapest server, cheapest virtual machines to for testing their application, for deploying their application. So what, how I can ensure, just because user who have honor permission, it means he can choose any type, any size of virtual machine. So I can select, I can create one policy which will define a statement that if user is going to deploy virtual machine, they can use DS1 V2 virtual machine. So in which they will get one virtual CPU, 3.5 GB RAM. So this would be a compute resource which they will get. So and 3,000 rupees, approx 3,000 rupees would be the monthly pricing for this virtual machine. So I will enforce my users to use this virtual machine for dev and test environment. So if they are going to use except in this virtual machine any other virtual machine size, they will face error. They will get error. Deployment will be failed just because we have policy here. So they need to deploy the resources based on the policies. Resources which are deployed previously, you can run an inventory through which you will get those resources which comes under into non-compliance. Okay, and then you can remediate those resources as well. So you will get an auditing report as well through which you would be able to get the list of resources which comes under into non-compliant, and you can configure all those resources. So you can remediate all those resources. So implementing Azure policies, you need to create a definition, policy definition, which is written into JSON. So you need to write your policy, assign the policy definition to resources, and then you need to evaluate your result. So policy will run. Whenever policy will run, you will get the evaluation result in which you will get your policy, your resource, status, compliant or non-compliant. A policy definition which expresses what you want to evaluate. Implement your policy definition by assigning the group of your resources. Review the result to the evaluation. Results are either compliant or non-compliant. If they are non-compliant, you need to remediate your resources as per your requirement. Define policy initiative. How you will define policy initiative? To defining policy initiative, so basically we have two things into as a policies: policy definitions and policy initiative. When I'm talking about policy definition, it means I'm talking about single policy. So if I have to apply a policy on a scope level, let's assume which would be a resource group, RG1, resource group 1, correct? where I have to create one policy, which would be location-based policy. This policy will be scope to resource group one. But if I have to create multiple policy like location policy, then VM size policy, then tag policy. So I have multiple policies which I need to scope to the same scope level, which would be my resource group. In that case, if you will individually create and assign policies, which is known as policy definition. So these policies, individual policies are known as policy definition. It will take lots of time and effort. What you can do, you can group all these policies into a single document, which is known as initiative definition. So create an initiative definition, group your all policies here, and in a single coordination, you would be able to attach all these policies to your scope. So it would be easy for you to applying multiple policies to the same scope level. Or if you have a standard of policies which you need to apply on your multiple scope level inside your organization based on the standard, you can create a initiative definition. So you will assign this initiative definition to multiple scopes as well. That is also possible into Azure. Let's come to next. So let me give you a small demonstration about Azure Load Balancer. So before going to start this demonstration of Azure Load Balancer, let me explain you why we are using load balancer. Okay, so we are using basically load balancer for high availability purpose. When I'm talking about high availability, how you can understand high availability? So high availability basically define your of your resource, or maximum downtime of your application due to any reason: hardware failure, software failure, network failure, rack failure. If your resource will be down, if your server will be down, so this would be the maximum downtime for your application. So now when it comes to Azure have SLA, service level agreement, with customer, with end users, so who are using Azure services. So if I'm going to deploy a single virtual machine, single VM, so I will get a SLA which would be 99.95%, sorry, 99.9%, three nines SLA for single virtual machine. If I'm using virtual machine into availability set, Azure availability set, so I will get a SLA which would be 99.95%. If I'm using my virtual machine into availability zones, EZs, so I will get a SLA which would be 99.99%. That means four nines. So single virtual machine, if VM fails, application will be down. If I'm creating more than one virtual machine and I'm using availability set, so Azure will place my all virtual machines into different racks in single data center. So this will be within the data center. So availability sets you can use within the data center into multiple racks. So rack 1, rack 2, rack 3. So if your rack 1 goes down due to hardware failure, software failure, still your application will be accessible from rack 1 and rack 2. If your whole data center goes down, in that case, you will face a downtime. Your application will face a downtime. So you need to choose next option, which would be multi-agent environment, where you can place your virtual machine into multiple data centers, multiple availability zones. So if your one data center goes down, still you will access your application will be accessible through different data centers. All these data centers are interconnected into the region, within the region. What if my region goes down? If your region goes down, then your all data center will be down at the same time, and which rarely happens, but yes, you need to think about this also. So you need to consider this also, just because if you have a business critical application, so you need to plan for DR also. In that case, if region goes down, it means my whole data centers, all data centers within the region, they all will be down at the same time, and there would be downtime for my application. What I can do, I can configure disaster recovery for my application to access my application. If I will configure disaster recovery, I need to create another application into different region, and I need to set up DR. So this would be a high availability solutions into Azure which you can use, and a high availability SLAs that is defined by your service provider into terms of number of nines. Now, how you will understand the downtime as per these number of nines? So it's very simple. You need to go to simply Google and type here high availability. So you will get one Wikipedia here for high availability. So you need to access this Wikipedia. Scroll down here, you will get a percentage calculation chart, as you can see. So based on the SLA which is defined by your service provider. So if I'm using single virtual machine, it means I will get 3 nines SLA. So it means the maximum downtime per year would be 8 hours for me. Per quarter would be 2 hours. Per month would be 43 minutes. Per week would be 10 minutes. Per day would be 1.44 minutes. Sorry, this would be for availability sets. Yeah. Next, if I'm using availability set. So if I'm using availability set, this would be the downtime. So per year downtime would be 4 hours. Per quarter would be 65 minutes. Per month would be 21 minutes. Per week would be 5 minutes. And per day would be 43 seconds. If I'm using availability zones for my application as a high availability solution. So I will get 8-second downtime per day, 1 minute per week, 4 minutes per month, 13 minutes per quarter, and 52 minutes per year. This would be the maximum downtime which you will get into availability zones for within the region high availability. Now across the region, you have to configure disaster recovery, and through disaster recovery, you will feed over to your secondary region. Now let's come to load balancer. Again, when it comes to high availability, it means I'm using more than one instances, more than one server to protect my application so that I will get high availability. So let me show you my infrastructure. So I already have two web servers here, which you can see on my portal. So let me go to virtual machines tab. As you can see, I have two servers, web 1 and web 2. Let me show you web 1 first. So both are deployed into the same region in US East region, and I'm going to show you on one lab with the regional load balancer. So let me copy and paste this public IP address into a browser. So as you can see, this would be my web server here, Microsoft Azure Administrator, run Azure Online, and that is a standstill for Azure Administrator, a baggage for Azure Administrator certified users. So if I will now access my web 2, so same website, just because we need a identical server. So there would be a minor change in your website, which would be Microsoft Azure Administrator 1, so that you would be able to understand that I'm accessing or I'm getting response from my web 2. Only for laptop perspective, otherwise you will get the same server, identical server. But I'm accessing my both server through different IP addresses, as you can see. Correct. Now, how I can ensure this, because whenever my user will send request, so they will send a request to a DNS URL, which would be my brand name, like collabra.com. Correct. So if they will send a request to collabra.com or to Cognixia.com, so requests will be sent to my backend resources, which would be my web 1 or web 2. How I can ensure this? So in that case, I need to create a load balancer into Azure. And through load balancer would be responsible to distribute your request, and by default it use a round robin algorithm to distribute your request from internet to backend resources. What round robin does, so it will distribute your request evenly to all web endpoints, evenly to your all backend servers. So first request will be sent to first server, second will be sent to second server, third will be sent to third server, like this. Let me show you how we can deploy a load balancer. So let me search here load balancer from the search bar. As you can see, you will get output based on your keywords. You need to select your service and you will be redirected to your service page. So for load balancing, we have these options which we can use. Either I can use traffic manager, which is a DNS based load balancer, or I can use load balancer, which works on layer 4. So it's a layer 4 load balancer. I can use front door, or I can use application gateway, which would be a layer 7 load balancer. So I'm going to show you load balancer here. Click on create. So nowadays you're getting a unified experience for load balancing services. All services are available on the same page, same tab. So you can configure and you can manage your services on the single page. So you will get a centralized view of your services or your resources. So we need to select one resource group. Let me select a resource group here. Then name of my load balancer, which would be LB1 for me, load balancer 1. My region, so as I'm creating a regional load balancer where I have my web endpoints, so I will choose East US. You will select your load balancer region as per your web endpoints from the drop down. So just because my web servers are in the US East, so I'm selecting here East US. SKU, so we have different types of SKU here, like standard, gateway, or basic. So based on the SKU, you will get different features like number of servers which you can attach as a backend. Like if I'm going to use basic, so I can attach 300 maximum instances behind my load balancer. If I'm using standard, I can attach 1,000 instances behind my load balancer, or I can attach instances from VNet, from VM scale set, or from different availability sets. If I'm using basic, I would be able to select my instances only from behind the availability set or from VM scale set. Correct. So you will get different types of feature based on the SKU which you will select. So let me select here basic SKU type. So in Azure, you will get two types of load balancer, public load balancer and private load balancer. So public, which will be exposed to internet. So you will get requests from internet, and internal means which will be available or accessible within the VNet. So internally, it will be accessible within the VNet through private IP address. Tier, so we have two tiers here, regional and global. Whenever you will select basic tier, as you can see, global tier is grayed out here. So that is only available in standard SKU. So whenever you will select standard, you will get both options, regional or global load balancer. If I'm going to select here basic, so global will be grayed out for me. So global is only available into standard SKU. So let me select here regional just because I'm going to use regional load balancer. Then you need to click on next tab for configuring front-end IP configuration. Front-end, as you remember, if I'm using a public load balancer, so either I will get a public DNS or a URL or DNS name, or I will get a public IP address as a front-end for my load balancer, where my end users will send request. So let me click on front-end IP configuration tab. Here I need to add a front-end IP address, which would be my public IP address. Click on add. So whenever you will click on add, you will get a pop-up here to add a public IP address, or you can select an existing public IP address if you already have. So your front end name would be, for me, I'm going to use same front end, and IP version, which IP version you're going to use, IPv4 v6. I'm going to use here IPv4. If you already have public IP address, you can select. Otherwise, you can create a new public IP address for your load balancer. So I'm creating a new public IP address. So name of my public IP address would be LB-PIP1, public IP address 1. Click on OK, click on add. So this would be the front end where user will send request to this public IP address. Next, you need to configure backend pool. Backend pool where you will associate your servers, your web servers who will receive request. So click on add backend pool. Pool name would be pool1. For me, you can give any name, but should be meaningful. Virtual network, click on drop down, select your VNet where you have your web servers. Then associated to, you can select virtual machine, VM scale set. Let me select here virtual machines. Then which IP you're using? I'm using IPv4. You need to click on add virtual machine and you will get your virtual machines here. Let me select web 1 and web 2, both VMs. Click on add, then click on add. So these are your virtual machines which are added into your backend pool 1. Next, you need to configure rule. Just because if I'm using load balancer, so from internet, I will get a request from any port, any protocol. Correct. So my load balancer will entertain which port and protocol. How I can ensure this? So what we need to do, we need to configure load balancing rule in which you will define if my load balancer is receiving request on port 80. then this request will be entertained by my load balancer. Except in port 80, all requests will be discarded by my load balancer. That you will define into load balancing rule. So click on add load balancing rule. Here you can see name would be rule 1. IP version would be IPv4. You need to map your front end IP address. Click on drop down and select your front end, which you have created in second tab. Then backend pool you need to map. So this would be pool 1. Then which protocol you're going to use? You're going to use TCP. Then port I'm going to use here 80. What would be your backend port? Backend port would be also same 80. So this would be my source port and destination port. Health prop, just because load balancer will do health check also to the associated endpoints. So to do this health check, you need to configure health check. So right now I don't have any prob. So let me click on create new, and name would be prob 1. Protocol I am going to use, either you can use TCP or you can use HTTP. I'm going to use TCP. So my load balancer will send a request on port 80 on my all backends after every 5 seconds. So this would be a periodic health check. If my load balancer will receive 2 consecutive failure, then my load balancer will decide that the endpoint is not accessible and it's unhealthy, and my load balancer will not send any request to any unhealthy endpoint. That is called health check, which will be done by your load balancer. You can enable session persistence as well. What is session persistence? I hope you all remember. So by default, load balancer use round robin algorithm. Okay. So if my load balancer use round robin algorithm, so it will distribute my request evenly to all web endpoints. So if you want a sticky connection or session affinity, okay, so you can use session persistence feature into Azure load balancer, where you have to use 5 hash tuple rule. 5 hash tuple rule in which you will specify your client IP, client IP address, port and protocols, and destination IP and port number. So by defining that, you would be able to configure session persistence. You will get a sticky session. You can specify your timeout. There's a floating IP address setting as well. If you're using more than one load balancer, you can use floating IP address. More than one front end, sorry, not load balancer, more than one public IP addresses, then you can use floating IP address as well to distribute your request. Let me click on add here. So this would be a simple load balancing rule configuration. Inbound net rule, which you can use later, that is optional. So once it will be done, outbound rule, we are not going to configure any outbound rule here. We are only going to configure inbound rule. Next, tags, review your configuration. And after reviewing what you have configured, click on create. And creating load balancer will take up to 1 minute. Let me click on create. So your load balancer deployment is started, which you can see here, and you will get a notification also here. So whatever deployment you have started through the portal, so you will get a template, a JSON template for this deployment. As you can see at left hand side, there's a template tab. So for all deployments, you will get your template as well, which you can download for orchestrating your environment. So if you need the same type of setting, if you need a reference template which you can customize for deploying your load balancer, so you can deploy your load balancer first of all through portal and then download this template, JSON template, and later you can customize this template for orchestration purpose, automation purpose. You can deploy your infrastructure as a code through JSON template also. In background, Azure is writing a script, a JSON script, JSON template for your deployment. So as you can see, one by one, you would be able to see your deployment. As you can see, my deployment is done. So if it is done, let's go to your resource, and you all would be able to see here. That is my load balancer. And at left hand side under settings tab, you have front end IP configuration where you will get a public IP address load balancer. Now I need to send request on this public IP address. Let's copy and paste this public IP address into the browser. And let me share in the chat box also, so that you all would be able to test this web application. So you all can send requests to this web application. As you can see, I'm getting response from web 2, Microsoft Azure Administrator 1. It means I'm getting response from web 2 server. So if I will send requests from a different system or from a different browser, I will get response from Microsoft Azure Administrator on Azure Online. That means from web 1. Just because right now I'm not using any sticky connection. So I'm using round robin algorithm, the default algorithm. So I will get response from web 1. Or if any other user who will send request to this web server, so he will get response from web 1. That is called Azure Load Balancer. You will get one another feature also with this load balancer. Let me show you that feature also quickly. So let me open a duplicate tab here. So just because of compliance rule, now as per the compliance rules state that you cannot assign a public IP address to your web servers, to your web virtual machines. So let me go to web 1. And as you can see right now, there is a public IP address, which is my load balancer's public IP address, which I'm getting here. So let me remove public IP address from my load balancer, for my web 1. So there is a public IP address which is different than my load balancer public IP address. Let me remove this public IP address from web 1. So we need to search public IP address, and there is a web 1 IP. Let me open this IP and let me deassociate this IP address from my virtual machine. So this IP address will be removed. If this IP will be removed, it means I cannot access my virtual machine as through RDP. If I cannot access my virtual machine through RDP, might be my application code crashed, or I have to update my code. So my service will be down, IS service will be down, which and I need to troubleshoot my virtual machine, let's assume, due to any reason. So if I have to troubleshoot my virtual machine, I need console of my virtual machine. So how can I access my virtual machine securely without assigning public IP address to my virtual machine? So without assigning public IP address to your virtual machine, how you will access your VM? So let me show you once again. Now on web 1, let me refresh. Let me go to web 1. On networking tab, you would be able to see now there's no public IP address. So I have only private IP address and I have one load balancer's public IP address. But whenever I will going to download RDP, I will get private IP address here. So through private IP address, you cannot get RDP from your local system. You need a public IP address. Let me show you web 2. On web 2, we have public IP address. So as you can see, I'm getting here public IP address for RDP. So we need to assume now that I don't have public IP addresses on my virtual machines. Now, how can I access my virtual machines without assigning public IP address securely? In that case, what you can do, if you have load balancer, you will go to your load balancer. You have NAT inbound rules where you can configure NAT rules. Let me show you. Click on add your rule name. So this would be RDP web 1, a meaningful name. So I'm going to enable RDP for web 1. Front end IP address, I'm going to use my load balancers front end IP address, public IP address as a source IP address. Then service would be RDP here. You can select your protocol, then you can select your ideal timeout here, then port number, source port number. So I'm going to specify here a custom port for source. So you can use either default port 33894 RDP. If you need more security, you can use custom port here. So I'm going to use here 50001 as a source port. So user has to send request or via this IP address, using this IP address and on this port. Then this request will be sent to my target virtual machine, which would be web 1, and it will be mapped to this private IP address. Then port mapping, yes, I'm using custom port here. So my port would be target port would be, that means destination port would be 3389. That means RDP port. Click on add this rule. This rule will be added here. Once this rule will be added here, you would be able to get RDP of your virtual machine. So let me show you. So let me open. So here I need to add IP address. So IP address of my load balancer. Let me copy and paste IP address of my load balancer from overview tab of my virtual machine. So this would be IP address of my load balancer, and then you need to specify your custom port as well. Then click on add, connect. As you can see, I'm getting this pop-up. What if I'm not using custom port? Let me edit this. I'm simply sending a request to port 3389 by using this IP address. So my request will be failed. I cannot access my virtual machine, web 1. Correct, as you can see, initiating remote connection. I will not get response from my web server just because I need to use custom port as well. So user who have information along with public IP address related to your custom port, that user would be able to access your virtual machine RDP securely. So here you need to enter your username for your virtual machine and your password for your virtual machine. As you can see, I am able to access my virtual machine web 1 through NAT inbound rule. Correct. So let me show you my virtual machine name, my computer name. So let me go to local server. Here you can see my my computer name is web1. Correct. So I have access web1 through RDP. So that's how you can manage security as well. Security, you can send a inbound request to your resources, your backend resources through NAT inbound. And with customized port, you can use custom port as well through the port mapping feature. So that is a lab on Azure load balancer. So now we are done with this technical part. Let's come to trends on Azure. So when it comes to trends on Azure, so as per the research, as per the research, so demand for Azure administrator, which has increased 7% as compared to December 21 in January 2022. So demand is increased by 12% in jobs. What would be the industries where you will get job? In which type of industries there are requirement of Azure administrator or who are hiring Azure administrator? So industries, IT services and consulting industries, number one. Then second, hardware and networking. Number three is banking industries. Fourth is government or public administrations. And fifth is telecom or ISPs type of industries who are looking for Azure administrators. Then departments which are hiring Azure administrators. So engineering department for hardware and networks, engineering department for software as well, IT and information security department, customer success, service and operations department, human resource department. They are also looking for Azure administrators. So these are the industries and departments who are looking for Azure. Now, when it comes to trained, so the salary services, so in Azure, we have different types of services which are in train right now. Like we have AI, ML, cognitive services, DevOps. So there are different types of services which are in train and which you can use for developing your solution into Azure. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. Bye bye. Take care.